Darth Krayt. Processing. The gift of the Force is rare. In a galaxy of trillions of beings, perhaps a few tens of thousands can feel the energy of life around them. And of those few, even fewer ever become practitioners of note. Sith or Jedi, it is important for you to know those characters of import in the galaxy. You must know who your potential rivals are, who could possibly be used to achieve your ends, who must be eliminated, and who could be a potential tool. You must know who to study, both to learn how they achieved their power, and to find their mistakes and discover how they fall. All those who choose the path of power will find themselves surrounded by those who wish to challenge their strength. For you to gain power, you will have to rise to that challenge, to climb up from the muck beneath the feet of better men, so that you can spit in their face. Today, I will speak to you about the man who drove me to rise above my station. The man who cast me down so that I had to claw my way back to the top. This man, a fellow Sith Lord, was for the longest time all that focused my hatred. He defeated me once long ago and set me on a path of vengeance that would stretch across the galaxy. This man was Darth Krayt. Born Asharad Het on the backwater world of Tatooine, Krayt was raised as a savage among the Tusken Raiders on the planet. His father was a Jedi Knight who had left the Order, one Sharad Het. Asharad was raised as a Tusken and taught the ways of the Force by his father. The young boy proved to be a skilled warrior and was beloved of the whole tribe. Eventually, war erupted among the Tusken clans, a war provoked by the Hutts in a bid to create a climate conducive to arms dealing. Krayt's father was murdered in the conflict by the Force-sensitive assassin and bounty hunter, Aurra Sing. The young boy would take up his father's lightsaber and would become the unofficial Padawan of Jedi Master Ki-Adi Mundi. Het would go with Mundi when he left Tatooine, and though he was older than usual at 15, Het was accepted into the Jedi Order. He would serve as apprentice to Mundi for many years. It was 2 years after he joined the Jedi that Het had his first true taste of the dark side. His master and he were dispatched to track down his father's killer. In the process, Krayt would face Aurra Sing and best her using his anger. Though he would use this dark side to help him win, Het was still too weak to complete the victory, instead turning Sing over to the Jedi as a prisoner. He was racked by guilt over the feelings he had used in his battle, despite not fully giving in to them. He begged his master to allow him to accept exile out of shame. Instead, Mundi passed Het's training over to the Dark Woman, Anya Kuro. Kuro was known for mastering her darker emotions by finding ways to channel them into positive means. Het would complete his training under her and ascend to the rank of Jedi Knight. Eventually, the Clone Wars would break out, ravaging the galaxy. Het would fight on the front lines, as many Jedi would. At the Battle of Jabim, he would befriend a young Anakin Skywalker, whom he would take under his guidance for a time. Anakin and Asharad had joined the Order at about the same time, both older than usual, and both with a past that left them grappling with an inner darkness. The pair came to be in battle again, this time at Argonar. Unaware that Anakin harbored a deep hatred of Tuskens, Het remarked to the young Jedi how similar the two were. This sent Skywalker into a rage. Because he could not direct his anger towards Het, he directed it towards the enemy, viciously cutting his way through waves of foes. His bloodlust eventually led him to attack Het directly, though Ashrad was able to disarm the less experienced Jedi. In his shame, Anakin would confess his slaughter of the Tusken village to Het. In order to help banish the boy's anger, Ashrad would remove his Tusken wrappings and reveal himself to be a human. This would be the first time Ashrad Het would grow beyond who he was. At some point, Het was promoted to the rank of Jedi Master. He would survive the Jedi Purge, killing his clone unit and escaping. Believing himself to be the last Jedi, Het fled back to his homeworld of Tatooine. There he would redon his Tusken wrappings and seize control of the clans, beginning a war with the human settlers that was truly just practice for his plans against the burgeoning galactic empire. Het harbored a deep desire for revenge against Vader and the Emperor for what they had done to his adopted family in the Jedi. During his campaign, Het was stopped by none other than his old friend, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The old Jedi Master warned Het he was dangerously close to the dark side and to turn away while he still could, but Het refused and the two fought. The duel ended with Het losing his right arm, his defeat before his army, breaking his leadership as the Tusken clans abandoned him. Kenobi spared Het's life, but made him swear to leave Tatooine. He would become a bounty hunter, hiding his true nature as a Jedi. One day, his pursuit of a target would take him to Korriban, where his ship would be brought down by a Force storm. While on the surface, he would be drawn to the old Sith ruins, and in a tomb, he would discover the Holocron of Lady So-San, one of the first Sith Lords. He would dedicate himself to her teachings, hoping to finally gain the power he needed to have his vengeance against Vader and Palpatine for their destruction of the Republic and the Jedi Order. But the Holocron held Het in thrall for too long, and by the time he emerged from the tomb, Vader and Palpatine were dead. The Empire had collapsed into shambles. Het again lost heart, feeling that there was no true reason for anything that he had gone through to have happened. His quest for vengeance, his war with the Tuskens, everything he had done as a bounty hunter, none of it meant anything. And so he left to the unknown regions, hoping to become lost in that part of the galaxy. There, in the depths of space, he was captured by a Yuuzhan Vong scout ship. He was placed in an embrace of pain and tortured endlessly, given to the Vong Shapers to experiment with. His mechanical right arm was replaced with organic tissue, and one of his eyes was removed and replaced with Vong polyps. He was implanted with more polyps across his body, and they would eventually grow to cover him like armor. It was during this time that Het would meet Burgeri. Burgeri was a Force Jedi who had turned Sith and was hiding among the Vong. She taught Het to open himself to his pain, to allow his fear and anger to let the dark side seep deep down into his bones. Finally, at long last, Het began to truly understand his destiny. He received a vision of the future, and in that vision, he saw himself sitting upon a throne, ruling a new Sith Order that was spread across the galaxy. After that, Het managed to escape. He destroyed his Vong captors with the power of the dark side and then fled back to Korriban. Here he took for himself the name Darth Krayt after the mighty dragons of his homeworld, and began to rebuild the Sith under a new vision. He called his grand plan the One Sith. He banished the rule of two, saying that there were no such thing as two Sith, that there would be only one Sith, him, his will made manifest by the order that surrounded him. Krayt began to experiment with sorcery to extend his life, placing himself into stasis for long periods of time. For 100 years, his order would grow in secret, and during this time, he would become aware of the being named Abeloth and her servants, the lost tribe of the Sith. Knowing that this being and this group posed a threat to his plans, Krayt left Korriban and traveled to find her on Coruscant. There he would discover Luke Skywalker and his Jedi also on her trail. And this is where I enter the story. I was one of the lost tribe. At the time, I was no one to anyone. A minion, too weak to be anything but a slave to both Darish Vol and to Abeloth. Krayt joined with Skywalker's Jedi, and together they defeated us and slew Abeloth. During the encounter, Krayt struck me down, taking off my jaw and leaving me for dead. But I did not die. I felt such anger at the shame of my defeat that the dark side flooded into my being and sustained my broken body. I was able to escape in the aftermath and go on my path of vengeance, a path that would eventually end in the creation of this Holocron. But that is for another time. After his victory, Krayt would return to Korriban. He would remain there for over 100 years, until finally his chance would come. The Jedi at the time were involved in a project that they hoped would restore life to many of the worlds the Vong had destroyed in their invasion. A group of Vong Shapers offered to help heal hundreds of worlds, and the Jedi wholeheartedly endorsed the project. It was here that Krayt would strike. He would send his agents to sabotage everything, causing the terraforming to go awry and for the worlds the Vong Shapers had worked on to wither and die. The galaxy erupted into an uproar. Species across the stars saw it as another Vong attack. The Jedi suspected sabotage and urged the Galactic Alliance to stand by the Vong. When they did, the Fel Empire declared war and demand for retribution. World after world defected from the Alliance, seeing their defense of the Vong as a betrayal. And within 3 years, the Empire had once again full control of the galaxy. It was then that Krayt revealed himself. The Jedi, aware of the Sith manipulations in the war, refused to join with the Empire and withdrew to their praxium on Ossus. Once there, Krayt would dispatch his minions. The attack would become known as the Third Jedi Purge, and it would scatter the Order once more to the corners of the galaxy. Even Cole Skywalker, Grand Master of the Order, would die in the attack. While this was happening, Krayt marched into Ronan Fel, Emperor of the Fel Empire's throne room, and slew him in cold blood, seizing the throne for himself. Despite protests, the Council of Moffs realized they had no choice but to accept Krayt as ruler, and named him Emperor. But his victory was not complete. The man Krayt had slain was nothing but a double. The real Ronan Fel was still alive, and out in the galaxy somewhere. At the same time, Krayt's health began to fail him. He had lived far past what was natural, and his Vong implants began to grow beyond his control, began to consume him fully. He dispatched his servants to find a means to heal him, and they would eventually hear word of Cade Skywalker, a former Jedi who was naturally gifted by the Force with the power to heal, even from the brink of death. They would begin to hunt down the last scion of the Skywalker line, and Krayt would become increasingly desperate as his condition worsened. He would soon turn to one of his chief servants, Darth Talon, and lose her to find Skywalker. Eventually, Talon would capture Cade, After speaking with Krayt, the last Skywalker would pledge himself to Sith teachings, promising to give himself to the one Sith and save Krayt's life in exchange for his friends' lives. Krayt was thrilled to hear this. He placed Talon in charge of Cade's training. But Talon didn't fully trust Cade, sensing he was not fully committed to their cause and was lying. When she told this to Krayt, he placed Skywalker in the same torture device, the embrace of pain, that the Vong had used on him. This would prove to be a mistake, hardening Cade against the one Sith, and he would escape without healing Krayt. In a rage, the Emperor ordered his minions to hunt down Skywalker, but Skywalker would evade the Emperor for some time. Eventually, he would be captured by Celeste Morn, who was at the time possessed by the spirit of the ancient Sith Lord, Karnus Mur. The ancient spirit told Krayt that he had to meet him at Had Abaddon and take Cade from him. Krayt agreed. He had no choice. His body was failing, and he had one last chance to save himself. But the meeting was a trap. Krayt was ambushed, grievously wounded, and then force-pushed off a cliff. Though he was able to use the Force to cushion his fall, his own servants turned on him in his weakened state, and he was believed killed. But this was not the end for him. He had grown too strong in the Force, had lived too long, become too experienced, and during the last encounter with Cade had been forced to use his healing ability in close proximity to Krayt. That was all the Dark Lord needed, and the secret of the technique was made known to him. He was able to save himself from the very edge of death. Krayt would find his way to Korriban, where he would make his presence known throughout the galaxy to anyone who had ever touched the dark side. He would return to Coruscant, kill the servants who had betrayed him, and reclaim control of the Empire. Once back in power, Krayt would turn his attention to the Fel rebels. The war would quickly turn in the Empire's favor, with Krayt scoring several major victories. He had no compunction about using questionable tactics, such as committing genocide against the Mon Calamari and placing entire populations into labor camps. Left with little other option, Fel approved a surgical strike against Coruscant, with the aim of killing Krayt for good. An offensive was launched against the system, and while the fleet battled overhead, a strike team led by Cade Skywalker landed on the surface to attempt to find the Emperor. Cade would succeed, and he would engage Krayt in a final battle, with the two dueling back and forth. Krayt would bring Cade to the edge of death, giving Cade a vision of Krayt victorious, of Coruscant burning, and Cade's friends dead. Krayt would try to torment Cade with these images, thinking to break him and bring him to his side. But when he revived Cade, Skywalker would slay him. This time, knowing that the Sith could bring himself back from death, they would launch his body into Coruscant's sun. And so my enemy was destroyed before I could return to claim my vengeance. What is there to learn from the tale of Darth Krayt? He will grow over many years to become one of the most powerful beings in history, one of the few to ever overcome death itself. And yet he failed in his goals. Why?